Okay, I now call to order the April 3rd meeting of the Polk City Parks Commission. Roll call, please.
Savage.
Here.
And Maple.
Here.
Otis.
Here.
Converse. Here. Holland. Here. Delaney.
Present.
Jablonski.
Here.
All right, thank you. In front of you from Monica, there are a printout of our minutes, which were also sent virtually. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes in a second?
Motion. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. All right, minutes are approved. Jason, is there any audience items?
Maybe. Are you wanting to speak?
If you have time.
Right now you got time.
Now's the
Oh,
time.
now's the time?
Yeah, walked in just in time.
We're
I was trying to get the whole Jason day. This weekend I saw a little sign on the corner that said, "Earth, run, walk."
I'm gonna pause you just for a second. Can you introduce yourself and tell us who you are?
Dennis Kane. I live up here in Vanport.
Perfect. Thank you so
Anyway,
much.
I saw this sign and it said Earth Day Run Walk. And I thought, oh boy, there is just one of these things. Is there any way we can get maybe some volunteers on that Earth Day to maybe clean up a little corner of our city? And what I'm talking about is down here on Broadway, between where those new houses are and the Beatty Cemetery and that whole length there, it's like a big catch-all of trash. Everything from the construction and everything on all these hills blows there, catches on that fence, and that whole ditch is just like strewn with garbage. I mean, it's just been that way for like 3 or 4 years. And I was just wondering if there's any way we could recruit some volunteers to go down there, kids or whatever, that would want to pick that and clean that area up, because that's like our town. I mean, it's like there's a walking path there and everything now, and it's just ugly. And it's just one of my little pet peeves.
Love it.
All those projects usually lack as a leader.
Yeah, well, hey, I would go down there and make sure it gets done, but it might take maybe 2 or 3 extra people to help. I mean, I'll forego the run walk and everything, but I would love to see that get cleaned up. You know, that was just, as soon as I saw that Earth Day sign, I thought, oh yeah, here's the time to do it. There's going to be people involved.
Okay. Any questions for Dennis? Comments? Responses?
Comments? I guess the run walk is not actually us, but the Friends of the Parks. So I love the idea. I'll come help clean you up down there.
Okay.
But if that's something that doesn't work out necessarily to do in conjunction with the run walk, maybe that's something you could do in conjunction with like the citywide cleanup day, where maybe the day after you put all your garbage out, you go pick up other garbage and get rid of it.
Well, that's just the biggest eyesore in the town. It's just a really bad catch-all place. You know, really severe.
I've also got an opportunity. I can add that project to our annual 8th grade cleanup day. So yeah, if it does not get handled before that, I'll have 100.
The 8th graders always come up at the park.
Yep, I'll have an army of 150 that I can
Oh,
stick
yeah.
on it. So
Yeah.
that is not till the end of May. So there's a good chance we could maybe handle that internally before then. But if not, we do have that option in the near future as well.
Well, I'm on the Friends of the Parks who's putting on the 5K event, so we can definitely add it to the agenda. We're meeting here in a couple weeks just to finalize details. So we will have some volunteers day of. They're mostly going to be helping just run and set up for the 5K itself, but you know, there might be an opportunity to promote and say, hey, if anyone's here or you get done with your race, you know, here's some garbage bags. You can hop over there and spend, you know, half an hour picking up some garbage and see what they say.
Garbage bags and a box or two of gloves, and I bet some people will be happy to wander over there and clean
Yeah,
it.
I think like the kid participants would especially feel like they were helping.
How long has it been since anybody's walked that hill?
Sunday.
What's it like?
Yeah, I walked back from the pub Sunday lunch. My daughter went to lunch at the pub, so.
But I mean, actually like walked the
Down it?
hill. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna do that with 5.
Well, that's what I'm wondering,
Yeah.
like, it might not be actually the optimal project for little kids doing the race or 8th graders. I don't know how steep it is and I don't know.
There's plenty of trash that's available to be picked up right.
Or
Right,
you leave it at a tree line and down,
Right.
you know.
just maybe there's 2 opportunities, right? Like maybe there's an opportunity for folks to pick up the visible trash that's right on the edge, but it might be something else where we need to tap into Public Works and add that to a project of some sort. Because that is Parks land now, is that correct?
The little piece around BB is, and then within the trail easement, at some point it does switch over to core. Correct, Ron? I'm not sure exactly where that point is. It may very well be the tree line.
Well, there used to be.
There's a
used to be
fence.
down there.
There's still a fence
Okay.
down
Is
there.
it still down there?
Yeah, I think there's still a fence down there, and the tree line has grown quite a bit between the thing. I mean, they're down a little bit further on the inside of BB's. There's actually some really nice those flowers, blue flowers, and
Wait.
spring.
Creeping Jennies.
No. These are phlox.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
a big patch of phlox down there that's really pretty in the spring. But with all that trash, it really
There's lots of areas in town. It seems like everywhere there's construction, trash, and.
Yeah, well, most of that construction on that street's done now.
Mm-hmm.
So, but there's a lot of garbage there from the construction and from years of trash collected in that fence row.
It's blowing from our street. Been on the construction builders to empty their dumpster
Yeah.
a few times. It's from Burton Drive. It's all across my backyard too, so.
I made a suggestion several years ago at a council meeting that might be a fundraiser for youth groups. That if the city could come up with some money and give a youth group to Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, whoever, to clean up an area, but didn't get much response from anybody else. I thought it was a good idea.
That's a great idea. I don't know where the funds would come from, but I do think
Church
it's a
groups,
great
we got a lot
idea.
of groups here in town.
All right. Thank you so much for your comments and suggestions. Any other audience items? All right, updates from the Arbor League.
My name is Ken Morse. I'm the chairperson and founding member of the Polk City Arbor League. I'm on the Polk City Tree Board, and I guess I'm here to kind of just give you an annual report. Last fall, we had 7 trees spaded in at the, I don't know what gas line park, off of Parker Boulevard on the west side of Parker Boulevard on the south side of the gas line. We put 6 trees in there and then put a buckeye tree in. I call it Linear Park, Lakeside Park, Jason?
Correct,
Lakeside
yep.
Park, I've got to get my terminology straight. I'm one of the old guys in town. We called things different, things were different back then, but anyway, Lakeside Park. Phil Jensen and I just recently attended the 67th annual ISU Shade Tree Short Course, that there's a brochure up there passing around on that. It's a 2-day course. I've attended for about 25 years, I think. Bill is also on the tree board and my right-hand man on the Arbor League. Some of the classes that I specifically took were the trees and storms, which defects are truly defective, arboricultural zombies, myths that will not die, the ways in which urban foresters limit tree diversity, brush busting and managing trees, shrubs, and woody vines, use your heading cut to delay decay, heart rot, the silent killer, and identifying deciduous trees of the Midwest. And there's a lot of different courses available. Those are the ones that I took. Phil took a lot of the same ones and a couple of different ones. But it's always real informative, and it's an opportunity for Phil and I to get some education that ultimately is to the benefit of the city. He, like me, is just a self-appointed tree hugger, and spends just as much time doing all this stuff as I. Anyways, it's real beneficial for both of us. We learned a lot of things, and always do, and it's a lot of fun to go do that. So that was in February that we did that. I guess the next thing is that we recently found out that we're getting grant money again from Mid-American Energy. And this Mid-American grant, the Arbor League has gotten money from Mid-American. If you know any executives at Mid-American, be sure to say thank you. We've gotten grant money from Mid-American every year for as many years as we are Tree City USA, which is 30. Don't let the cat out of the bag on that, Ron. We attest on that. So we've been a Tree City USA for 30 years, and we got this grant money from Mid-American again. When I first got involved with the Arbor, when I founded the Arbor League, it was a twofold thing. One was the city had taken out a tree off my parking that I objected to, that thing. But the bigger deal was there was an article in the paper about Mid-American Energy giving money to communities for trees. And Polk City wasn't in on the deal, and I thought, well, all it needs is somebody to volunteer to say, I'll run this program. And so I did, and we've gotten money every year, at least 25 years anyway, maybe closer to 30 from Mid-American, which in total is excess of $30,000. And most all of it has been matching grant money that we can match through the Arbor League or even in kind, which is our labor costs and so forth. And the city has put some money in toward, a couple of projects as well. And we did a Trees for Kids grant that covered a couple of parks up there. Anyway, so we did get the trees, Mid-American grant. We got our Tree City USA award that Jason and Phil and I are going to that luncheon next week. Get a new stickers for our signs and a new flag. A week or so ago, met with Tanya Harrington with the Friends of the Parks Committee, and we talked about various things. She wanted some information regarding the trees that we planted up at West Elementary. And through the course of that, one of the things that came up is that the Arbor League has been talking about for a while. We just haven't implemented this project. And when I mentioned this to Tanya, she stepped right up. But I'd like to, at some point in time, get some sort of a formalized program where every park in town has a neighborhood park ambassador. And they don't necessarily have to be on the Arbor League. They don't have to be on the tree board. They don't even have to really know anything about the trees. They just have to be somebody who would volunteer to keep their eye on the park. And all that means is if you see trash, pick it up. If there's a problem, call somebody that, will deal with it if you can't deal with it yourself when it comes to broken limbs and trees that are broken and need to have, trimming done. I can't make it to every park in town every month. I try to do them all at least annually, but if we had a local ambassador, that would take responsibility for each park, it would go a long ways just to let Jason or I know if there's an issue there, whatever the issue may be. And it's not necessarily you've got to fix it, and it's just let us know so that we can fix it because we're not always there. So that's one of the things that we're working on is a neighborhood park ambassador type thing. And that's really, I think, all I've got. Unless there's something else that I was supposed to talk about that I forgot.
No, I mean, I think the big thing is that, this is going to be the 30th year that we're going to be Tree City USA. So that's a big deal. I mean, I've been lucky enough to be around for the last couple, and it's been a joy getting to work with Ken and Phil. And
There's only like
30 years is big.
130 communities in Iowa that are Tree City USA out of the 900 plus communities in the state. So it isn't just that everybody has it, and it is recognition for the city. The Arbor League has essentially done the work in the past. Jason's taken over the administrative end of it, but it's recognition for the city. And when you drive around, I notice the Tree City signs when I drive around the country, and see Tree City signs other places, and you look around and you can see that there's, they've got trees to take care of. In most all cases, it's by a group of dedicated tree-hugging volunteers. Dennis is also on the Arbor League, so that's what we like to do, and I'm a self-appointed tree hugger.
So this group is, they're very talented. They're always volunteering, and in a town like Polk City, where a larger town may have a city forester on staff that does these kind of things, and we don't have that here. So volunteers like this are amazing. So thank you guys.
I'd be glad to get on the payroll with you.
I was going to say, we do have one, we just don't pay.
We just don't pay them.
I do have a question for you. Is there a particular grant at Mid-American that we always applied for?
It's called Trees Please.
Trees,
Trees Please. And they'll only give one grant per community. And Jason and I have been working together on that deal. So we've secured it. And we've increased the amount. We've incrementally increased it year by year. And when we've asked for it, we've got it.
We've asked for extra money after the derecho got it too,
Yeah.
from donors.
Mid-America's real good about that. So again, if you know any of the executives, say thank you, because they put a lot of money into Polk City over the years.
Do you know who you apply to? Is it to their board? Is it to?
The person that I actually get my correspondence from, his name is Stacy Christopherson. Christopherson, I think it is. Maybe you've got that, Jason. And
That's
they're
all right.
out of-
That's
I-
enough for
and
me
I don't
to
know if it's
search.
Stacy, a guy or a man, but they're in the Sioux City office.
I have found, I mean, I'm not that old, but I have found that a handwritten thank you note on
Mhm.
something like that
Mhm.
sometimes goes a lot longer
And I have-
than a phone call.
And I haven't yet this year. We just got our check a couple days ago, but I have, when I do tree work in town, I always send out thank yous. So I have sent thank you notes out to them. And again, made the comment. And I told the guy that was in the other day, Brian, how much we really appreciate it and depend upon it. And the difference that it makes in this community. The city of Des Moines, a couple $1,000s would be nothing, but it's huge here. It makes a big impact in this community. And when you look at all of the plantings, and I could go on, starting with the sports complex and then K Park, and we'll go up there. But a lot of those were planted with Mid-American money, and not all. It's huge.
And I think parents that have young kids, that's one of the number one things you look for when you choose what park to visit is there shade available?
Right.
Either on the structure itself that the kids are playing on, or if you're fishing, is there shade available? And you always know where the shade is in the park because there's always wear and tear in the ground
Yep.
underneath where the shade is present.
You know,
So
it's funny, even as small as the trees are at the rock park behind the school up there, I've been up there from time to time, and you'll see the kids, they'll sit in that little 5-foot space,
Yeah.
where there's just a little bit of shade, because it's not a very big tree. But in the years to come, there will be more shade.
matters. Well, and thank you to you for the work. I know grants.
Well, and a big part of what Ken does is education. He comes every year, I don't know how many, 30 or more years, you came almost every year I worked up there. And
Every Arbor
educated
Day.
the kids and did plantings and got the kids involved in it. It's very educational, and
Every Arbor Day.
citizens, if they have questions about it, they can contact the Arbor League too about planting
I
and
get a lot of just calls.
maintenance.
Arbor Day is the last Friday in April. It's the second best day to plant a tree. Best day is today. That's always the second best day to plant.
Do you put out information about trees, recommended trees to plant? Because and particularly with all the development in Polk City and all the new homes going in, the home, they're putting most of the homes, they're putting a couple trees in every lot. Is there information out there what trees are to plant? Because the reason I'm saying that, I'm old enough to remember back when I was originally in my elementary career, we were passing out ash trees like
Sure.
crazy. Everybody just said, plant ash trees, and that was about 35 years
It's a
ago.
great idea while it lasts.
And now all of a sudden we're dealing with
Well, that.
the
And
problem.
it was Dutch elm disease before that. And again, any tree's better than no tree. And that's one of the hazards that we face is the next thing that might come around is going to wipe out all the maple trees. And maples are overplanted. So, I mean, that happens. And
Dude, that's like saying Beetlejuice. You don't say that.
Yeah.
He's right. To go back to the question originally, the city has a list of recommended and non-allowed trees for for planting in the right of way and recommended trees for yards. But if the Arbor League doesn't, we don't have that list. I mean, we can get you that kind of information, but we're just a group of volunteers that like to plant trees in the city. We don't really know very much.
I personally would like to see the city demand that all the new houses plant native trees, because native trees are going to be healthier and they're going to promote local wildlife, birds and stuff like that, and insects.
One of the classes that I took was again about the ways in which urban foresters limit urban tree diversity. For years we planted ash trees. For years we planted maple trees. There's a lot to be said for the native things. I took a course a couple of years ago about the interrelationship of the native trees and the native species that flat out depend on. And you can bring in all kinds of other non-native species, but they don't support some of the native bugs that we have. You know, the trees might survive, but and a lot of them don't. Over the years, we've learned that the hard way with things like Colorado blue spruce. They're called that because they're well adapted to Colorado. Black Hills spruce, you know, they're not, you know, they'll live here, but not in the long, because it's not their habitat. Yeah, the city does have a list in regards to trees.
And the Japanese beetles love the European ash.
Yep. Yeah. And the ice trees are going away. That's all I got.
Any plans for the upcoming year?
Yeah, well, yes, and not specific, only in the regards that we just got this grant. This is a matching fund grant. The city's got tree, budget, like a line item budget for trees. And so we do have some money, and we haven't decided exactly where we're gonna best do that. We kind of came to the conclusion that we get a lot more bang for our buck if we can spade trees in versus container grown trees. It used to be that container grown trees were much more affordable, but what used to be $100 is now $250, and for double that, we can spade in a big tree. So we've been kind of going that route where we can. Can't do that every place. So yeah, we're gonna do some more things, but I don't know what yet. Big surprise. I'll keep you. You're on the board. You'll be in on the discussions. We need to have a meeting, Dick, and I know that as well.
Yeah, I mean, going off of that, there was just a report released that 40% of all insects have declined in population since about 2010.
50% of all birds have
Yeah.
declined in population in 50 years.
Insecticides will do that.
Well, and part of that is habitat, and like I said, the trees. Birds have to make their shells strong by eating snail shells and stuff like that. There's just not as many snail shells around. You know, they have trouble finding all that.
I was in a recent class too that was very overwhelming to listen to the information they were sharing. 33% of all insect populations worldwide are listed on the endangered species list.
Someday.
It's a lot of insects.
Have y'all had a chance to look at that brochure that I put up there? And if
Yes.
not, because I need to have that for when I go to the city council presentation, so I can tell them the same.
I do have a question about that class, actually.
Yes.
Do you pay for that out of pocket, or is that something?
I
that
did
gets
pay for it out of pocket
reimbursed?
for a number of years, and then finally the city pays mine and Phil's way, and I'm real happy that they do. It's not a free class, and I greatly appreciate the city doing it. Like I say, I did it for years out of pocket just because it was the right thing to do, because it was for my own benefit too. But ultimately, this is for the city's benefit more than my own.
Yep.
But thanks.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Any questions to Ken? All right, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Recommendation on the priorities for park projects and capital improvements. Jason?
Yeah, so to follow up on our March meeting, in front of you is kind of a synopsis of all the ideas that you guys came up with for our next 5-year CIP. The thought process here tonight is more conversation amongst the commission, and hopefully maybe the cream rises to the top and you can identify your top 5, your top 10 that will be noted and sent to council as they do their prioritization of the 5-year CIP. And yeah, if you have any questions about any of my notes here, I'm happy to elaborate further. There are some on here that I think is low-hanging fruit that can probably be done in my budget. So if we omit those, that's totally fine, like a backstop, stuff like that. I can figure that out. So yeah, I want you guys to kind of concentrate on the big here. Again, try to imagine $10,000 or more. But yeah, this is kind of a conversation amongst you guys, and I'm here to help any way I can. But
I do have a question that I forgot to email you and ask you, but I think it's also a good question to ask publicly. A while ago, we had some conversations about this pre-COVID, so we're talking 5 years now-ish ago. We had some conversations around the idea if someone wanted to buy a slide for a park, or if someone wanted to add park benches or something, there's not necessarily a way to do that. So if on some of this lower hanging fruit, if someone wanted to sponsor something along those lines, is that now possible with Friends of Parks?
yeah, so the Friends of the Parks, they do have I'm going to call it a memorial and tribute program, where It's like trees, benches, picnic tables. You know, I don't know if a lot of this would be something that would be put on there, but I think in a certain instance it could, where if somebody was interested in a backstop, we do have the mechanism that they could donate that money, they can earmark it, and we could make that happen. So absolutely, there is a way.
So you would like us to go through and basically decide which we really want to put as our tippy top?
Yep, I mean, this is your guys' recommendation to council as they start the process of the next year, or the next 5-year CIP, so, yeah, amongst yourself, prioritize what we've got on this sheet, and we'll go from there.
Jay, I have a question on under Town Square.
Yes, sir.
During the meet, there looks like a lot bigger list was generated under Town Square, and then also the playground improvement. And is that all under what you're calling master plan? Or do we need to add playground improvement under Town Square?
Yes, you certainly could, and I apologize, that may be an accident, I did not mean to omit that. I would probably just call that Town Square improvements as an overall. You know, if we wanted to get granular enough that it was playground or it was electrical box underground, you know, we could do that. Or if you wanted to just encompass all of it in a package of square improvements, I think that would be adequate as well. We would certainly really identify what those square improvements are as we recommend to council, and if we need to break it up, we can at that level, but hopefully that gives you some direction.
I would say regional park definitely needs to be at the top, and my recommendation would be as much of that as we can make progress on. So, like, that's the top priority, and whether or not we need to have action on these other things in that time, or hold off on some of these improvements. I'm not sure. Like, the regional park is obviously a huge project. So then just having guidance there, if that is our priority, how many of these things do we need to add on that priority list?
I think in terms of dollars and not knowing with legislation and things that will affect us at this level, obviously that is number one. I know it's high on councils as well. I would still go through this process where if, you know, in a certain year of the CIP, we have 100,000, that could very well go toward the park, or it could do something tangible that you could see right then. So I think still go through this process, where obviously we know what one is, but, you know, outline some of these other things too. But yeah, I mean, I think we all know, and we can all certainly make a note that stands above and beyond.
I'll double down with what you're saying. If we rated these 1 through 10, the regional park would be 1 through 7, and then 8, 9, and 10 for the rest.
I think prioritizing below the regional park would be doing things like the pond health items, the ones that if we don't take care of them now, if we don't do things, they're going to get worse, and it's going to be a bigger problem later on. So I would put the two pond health priorities below that.
That's the low-hanging fruit that needs to be done before it's too late type of thing.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's low hanging fruit, but it's stuff that we don't want to sit back on our laurels and watch it get unusable before we try to correct it.
So if I may, I don't know if my opinion's worth too much, but I want to say that I feel like we should go through and prioritize things other than the sports complex. Realistically, even if we had $100,000, that is a drop in the bucket of the total expense, right, for a complex, at the expense of these other areas that would go by the wayside and kind of wither and die. I agree, everyone. I've sat here and honestly, I agree everybody wants to have the sports complex be the number one thing and have it right now. But realistically, if you look at the cost of the park and the funds available and what we have, I feel like you're doing a disservice to the community if you disregard all these other parks and don't focus on things that's more attainable and accomplishable within a certain time period. I really feel like the sports complex is its own beast and needs to be handled a different way. Again, that's just my 2 cents on this. I really would like us to look at some of these other things and prioritize them and realistically figure out what we can do to improve them now, rather than, put all of our money in the bank and save and wait till we can do something with the sports complex. So,
Well, and to piggyback on that, where do the organizations that use the sports complex come in that equation in terms of, are they,
oh,
are you talking about the
I'm sorry, not the sports complex. I was misspeaking. Regional park.
regional park?
Sorry.
I was tracking. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
All right.
I was referring to the regional park, not the sports complex.
So my question about the sports complex, where do the organizations that use it come into the play on this one in terms of, I just remember, and of course it's bigger city, but Urbandale told there's the Girls Softball Association that in 10 years, we're gonna be paving that parking lot, and you need to pay, if you wanna continue using that, you're gonna need to cough up half of that dollar amount. So they had 10 years to build up their coffers, and then when the city came ready to pave that parking lot, part of it was paid for by the organization. So with the sports complex, if you're talking about additional parking, is that something that you would go to, that we would go to the Little League and the soccer associations and say, we need to ask an increase in fees because we're gonna do this? Or is the feeling that the city has to solely be responsible for it?
No, I will say in the past, the baseball, softball, and soccer, they have been very good about putting their own money into the existing sports complex, and that certainly has a secondary benefit on the city and independent users. It might have just been March, but when you guys approved that set of that fee structure, you may have been gone. But no, I would certainly anticipate that the revenue generated from those fees goes to these things. And that could be seen as the club's money in, kind of thing. Now, if the clubs felt so inclined to put money in additional, that is, absolutely up to their discretion, but that would not be the expectation. Yeah, that's kind of what these fees created were to, help do the improvements out there.
I would say we need to remember that these are volunteer clubs, and it's not your elite club, your program that we're doing that. So everything that soccer and baseball and softball are doing, those are led by volunteers, and they're providing a service that the city hadn't been doing in the past, and it's for all of our residents. So it's feeling like we could just say, like, well, Jason, you are in charge of soccer, softball, and baseball now, or these clubs can keep doing that as a volunteer service. So we need to remember that this isn't like a separate brush program that we have here, or things like that they are led by volunteers too.
So Jason, rather than I don't want us to spin our wheels too much. What do you think we should boil this down to? A list of top 5 things, like you said, and top 5 things that would exceed your operational budget?
To compare it to the last CIP, I would say the Parks and Rec Department probably had, between studies, trails, park improvements, it was probably between 12 and 15 that I benefited from. Not that you need to go that far, but I think the old David Letterman top 10 would be appreciated. obviously knowing regional park is number one, that is kind of a beast all its own. So yeah, if you can, and maybe if you don't even need to rank them per se, but if you were to just identify 10 here that you see fit, doesn't matter which is 1, which is 10, just overall 10 that you think would be worthwhile investing in.
So is it easier for us to sit here and jaw at each other about this, or do we just want to
Or it's just-
individually rank on these sheets and turn them in?
I was actually gonna make a different suggestion, but that's okay. I mean, we can go that way. I was just gonna make a suggestion that there's some of these that kind of lump in together. Like pond health, for an example, knocks 2 things off of the list, and chances are, if we're doing native plantings at one pond, that's literally a hop, skip, and a jump away from the other pond. It makes sense to tackle them together. I also do have some trepidation about continuing to just say it's not worth it to save $100,000 for the regional park, because in my opinion, I would rather invest that money in paying for a fundraising board or person or entity of some sort to get that project organized and off the ground. So I don't know if we want to maybe break out some of that regional park thing and actually put that down on paper. I think we need to be realistic, Jason, about what that means under regional park timeline and progress. Can you, do we need to break that apart, or?
Not really. I think we have a master plan that Confluence did for us that really kind of breaks it into the progression. Obviously grading comes first.
But we've been sitting on that master plan for 3 years now without any movement. So as a board member, I'm super frustrated about that and feel completely incapacitated about my ability to influence it. So I guess maybe what I'm asking with a little bit more clarity is, does it behoove us to write down 1 through 7 what our priorities are within that regional park, then add the other things that we find to be important? Or do we literally just write regional park as number 1? Because I don't think that communicates to the extent that we all feel that that is a priority. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I think the only thing that I would have any trepidation on is if we did break the regional park into that. I don't know that the commission nor myself has enough information that, obviously there are pieces of that regional park that are contingent on others. So that might be a much bigger exercise that we do down the road, where we know that A, B, and C need to happen before D. So there's no use in putting D as our top choice, because that's not realistic or possible. So,
Right.
I mean, if you guys want to table this and we can bring more literature about the regional park and you can tear that apart in the future, we certainly can.
I think we discussed it pretty well last
I do
week,
too.
of having a backstop of a targeted completion date on the wall that everybody can look at and stare at and work towards, rather than the 3-year idle time. Other than that, I think we're just beating it to death, that it's a priority.
So I would like to make a suggestion to the board or to the commission. I would like to tell the council that our number 1 priority is the regional park. In my opinion, I'm saying this not as a suggestion, but I would sacrifice pretty much everything on this list to get that project in a legitimate space of movement towards completion with a timeline and fundraising in process, and then return to some of these things 5 years down the road. That would be my opinion, but then give them a top 10 list after making that very clear statement. That's what I would like to submit.
Disagree with that. But
That's
just-
okay.
Yeah.
No, you're supposed to talk. It's good.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, I disagree with that, but,
What would you put on there then?
I think some of these other items we could go through and prioritize. Again, I just, your issue with the regional park comes down to money. Until you get that solved, no conversation, no back and forth, no saying this is what we want. So I don't know enough about what plans there are with the city, you know, with the city hall and everything to move that forward, but until you have money, I mean, what's the point? So I do like your idea though about maybe taking some of the funds and inquiring about or hiring a fundraiser person, right? To be
Yeah.
able to raise that. That seems more realistic to me than disregarding all these other things and saying we just want this. So that's just.
I would agree. I mean, a project of that caliber is a lot of raise for, especially for community our size. So I think I think maybe some of these can, projects maybe need to just go on the back burner for temporarily or financially until we can get maybe we invest some money in getting a plan put together for how to tackle the fundraising and then figure out how we can bite it into, bite it off in smaller chunks and make it more reasonable so we can at least make progress towards it. But I don't think we need to put all of these on the back burner. I think maybe it's just, I don't know, maybe 50% of what you spent on capital improvements a year goes towards regional park, 50% goes towards this. I'm just throwing out 50%, but maybe it's whatever it takes to get the ball rolling on the regional park, which I think I agree fundraising is the next step.
That's what I'm trying to communicate. I'm trying to say, like, I don't think $100,000 a year in parks budget is going to get the regional park finished. I'm saying, I think investing in how we get that park moving is a top priority for me. Yes, sir.
Council has already discussed hiring professional fundraisers to help. We haven't moved on it yet, but it has been discussed. I think we need somebody, correct, to help us drive that capital plan. Because I'm not a professional fundraiser. I didn't like selling Christmas cards when I was a kid, but you got to do it.
What an
I think we need
oxymoron.
professional
fundraiser. Pay somebody to raise money. I get it. I'm terrible at it too.
I did.
You got to do it.
I had 2 good years when I was carrying papers.
I paid my brother to do it. Now he does really well owning his own business selling stuff. So
I mean, realistically, I don't see anything with, and again, this is not what I do, by day. I'm just saying, until you have secured at least half of your funds at a minimum, I just don't see any movement on that regional park. And the only way we're going to get any funds, unless Prairie Meadows or somebody like that wants to throw a bunch of money, is we're going to have to do the fundraiser. So I would get on board, and I would totally agree about making one of our top items, putting focus on a fundraiser for that.
Well, won't things move a little bit faster on the regional park once the water tower issue and the grading issue gets
But
resolved?
isn't faster kind of relative? I mean, all of it,
Absolutely, the grading issue. That's big. We're talking big dollars. Big dollars for the grading out there. Right now, we're trying to work with NAP Properties to do a joint thing. Well, they'll pay for their development. We will pay for ours. Something to get them all. Of course, if you get them down there doing a big project all at once, it's going to lower the price rather than we hire them, they hire them. The council is working on it. We're talking big dollars. Do you remember the figure?
See, the first estimate, on the grading of ours?
Yeah, on
the estimate is 3 million.
That's for grading, not just our park, or for grading the
No,
entire town
that is the estimate of ours.
of our portion.
That is if we went it alone, I should say. That's an estimate in the master plan that yes, by doing a joint grading with NAP, we would anticipate that 3 million would lower significantly. So we're working with NAP on that. We are waiting to get that estimate back, showing what the cost savings would be.
Okay, and
Several
we
meetings.
currently
I haven't been
have,
part of them, but Jason has had several more meetings. And you got to start the ground. You got to work your way up.
don't we currently have a budget for the regional park in the current capital improvement plan? Because I thought the number was 5 million that we had earmarked for it.
Currently in the CIP,
CIP.
there is that. Yes.
Get that.
Yes.
So I understand we're still going to wait and work now to get it done cheaper. But do we know when we expect to get those negotiations to some sort of conclusion?
It's a work in progress, is all I can say.
Okay.
And we had 2 bond issues here in town for regional park, sports complex, whatever you want to name put them. They both failed. taxes
Most
raised?
recent one?
It's 2015.
2015.
I think things have changed. I mean, I obviously didn't live here in 2015, but I think even from 2010, last census, things have changed significantly. That bond might have different results today.
How long is the bond that is funding the city hall?
Oh,
What now?
What's the duration of the bond that's helping pay for city hall?
I'm not sure.
There wasn't
I'm
a
not
lot of
sure.
money.
Didn't think there was a bond.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
There
I
was
thought
no
we,
bond. I didn't think there
We
was a
took
bond.
out a couple loans to do the city hall and other improvements.
there was. I thought there was some kind of bond that the citizens didn't have to vote for. Or like
No,
it doesn't matter.
there's gonna be a bond, but it ain't gonna be voted on.
What's that?
There's gonna be a bond, but it's not gonna be voted on by the people.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's,
Is that,
there's at least one councilman that's not very happy, but,
maybe that's a conversation for another day. Let's
Yeah.
move through this exercise. Okay, so I've heard pond health be a top priority. Is there any discussion on that, putting that down on our top 10 list?
I agree. I think pond health and the natural plantings both can be done simultaneously or at least in concert.
I would agree with that.
One other thing I'll add is I think the bandstand improvements is probably worthwhile to consider as well, since it's such a focal point through
It is
traveling through town.
marquee for our town.
Yes,
right.
I would agree with that too.
Well, and I was just gonna say, if you want, the town square would be, in my mind, one of the ones that you wanna have up there on the top, just for the sheer numbers. You have, constantly have people using the town square and anything you can do to keep the improvements going there.
I do have a question off of that, going off of piggybacking. As they put in the new city hall, will there be any work that happens on the square or connecting it with like sidewalks or that would require any sort of digging? I'm asking because that would then be the optimal time to bury the power boxes.
I don't think anything to that level. There will be some sidewalk alignment and some bump outs to make it safer for pedestrians to get from City Hall to the square. I don't know how much actual digging will take place on the existing square.
But if we're gonna tear up any part of it, it makes sense.
you're absolutely right.
At that point in time, to just go ahead and
And
do that work.
And that's something that one of these days we're gonna be faced with. We won't be able to, where all that electric out there above ground could become a hazard.
I have said that's a liability issue for a long time.
I agree.
So is everybody okay with putting those two things in there separately, bandstand improvements and addressing the power structures on the square? Because to me, those are two different things.
Would that necessarily be a parks thing, or is that not just a public works?
Yeah, I'm kind
Utilities
of
thing.
on the fence with that one.
I
I
would
feel like
say
that's
that's-
more of a public
That's a
works
public
thing.
works problem. It might be in parks ground, but that's a utility that needs to be under.
I don't know
A
that.
good approach to that would be, we're in favor of it, we want it, but you pay for
I guarantee
That's
the
certainly
parks,
more parks budget.
Isn't that the,
I
isn't that
guarantee
the
the
American way?
I guarantee the parks department didn't say, man, it'd be really nice if this electrical structure.
But we did say it'd be really nice so we can light the square. I mean, that's originally why those power boxes were put there, is to draw attention to the square. And make it a usable space for people in town, so
And
I
plus,
understand where you're
I just
coming
think
from.
it's a safety issue.
it is. I also think that once those are put underground, you'll be surprised at how much space gets tore up on the square, which means it's landscaping, it's maintenance, it's, so that part would be a parks issue. Is everybody okay with putting that project, however it may be paid for, on our top 10?
I'm sure that Snyder Engineering would have some great ideas to help accomplish that.
I'm sure they would.
All these inside jokes.
How much do we pay them an hour?
I think it's inside animosity.
You don't want
Is
to,
that what it is? I
Go through the full.
I guess
agenda
my
and
only
see.
comment would be, I would rather have that be lower down the list, but still on the list. Because I'm still kind of iffy about. I would hate, not being able to get a shade structure at Lost Lakes Park just to redo or something like that. That's just my
Well, and
opinion.
something to keep in mind too, like the shade shelter, for instance, is probably, where the Friends of the Parks raised money to put one in Leonard Park. It was about 10,000 raised. So,
Okay.
and we do have it on the radar to raise funds for more of those. So some of those smaller projects might be achieved through Friends of the Parks as well. So I think getting some input from the commission on what those projects might be would be great. Because
Okay.
every year we're trying to consider what should our priorities this year, what's going to be our key thing to raise money for. So this year it's helping the city finish off Pocket Park and doing some on the square. So that's like the Earth Day 5K. That's money's going towards that project this year. But some of the smaller ones we can definitely maybe they could still happen just with another avenue.
Pocket Park all the way.
The resurfacing of the tennis courts at Miller Park, are they used a lot now, or if they were resurfaced with pickleball court lines, do you think that they'd be used a lot?
Yes, so they are used, I would say quite well. I do know of that some people don't use them because of the surfacing that exists there. It's not optimal. But yes, I think if we did, I would want to make it as multi-use as possible, and that would include pickle.
And given the number of people that are picking up that particular sport, in my mind, that would be one that would pop higher up because of that. It's not personal.
Anybody opposed or have conversation around that?
I agree.
All right.
I've gone up there and played a couple times, but pickleball just doesn't bounce square on that. Just doesn't bounce right on that surface. I've played twice up there, or tried to.
I would like to bring up the idea of scoreboards at the sports complex.
Wasn't there scoreboards out there?
There's two.
There, but they never worked, correct?
That is correct.
Do we know why?
I'm working with our electrician who's trying to get in touch with a representative for that brand of board to get that fixed. So I am looking into those two right now.
I mean, they were up when we hosted the state Little League softball tournament, but weren't working. And at the time then, they thought, because they're remote, they thought maybe we're gonna have to bury wires, but nothing ever became of it. And as far as scoreboards go, I know at high schools, the schools, if you let them put Pepsi or Coca-Cola on there, they'll pay for your scoreboards. You let them advertise. I don't know if that works for cities or not, but it
So
does
you're
in
talking
schools.
about
I don't know why it wouldn't.
placement scoreboards?
I'm talking about having 4 fields that have functional, usable scoreboards, because that changes what we use those fields for long term.
I could support that.
I think some of the other sports related ones, like the backstops or the frisbee golf, or what's the other one? There's another one. All of the biking and the volleyball, like we can coordinate with the local groups that are using those areas or that would like to use those areas and see if there's something 50-50 we can kind of do. Hey, yeah, we're gonna, like Parks and Rec, you can only have so many sand volleyball leagues if there's only one sand volleyball.
On that sand volleyball note, didn't we just get a donation for work on the sand volleyball court from Kiwanis?
Yes, Kiwanis donated money to purchase a new volleyball system that would replace the existing.
Replace the nets.
The poles,
Poles,
the
net.
net system, yes.
Okay.
Yep, but that is a replacement, not an
Not
additional.
an additional.
Correct.
Sand volleyball courts are actually way more expensive than realized.
It's a lot of sand.
Doesn't surprise me.
It's a lot of drainage, a lot of
Yes,
sand.
I was just gonna say it's the prep work prior to putting in the sand, but it is so expensive.
But I think it's good to focus on, in the absence, or while we wait for the regional park, like what other park areas can we capitalize on to expand our opportunities with, whether it's sand volleyball, more ball backstops, soccer goals, resurfacing the tennis courts, things of that nature. We can maximize our current green space to have more of those areas.
Would you like to make a suggestion on what to put on the list? We have 5 out of 10 currently.
Yeah, I would like to list the additional parking at the sports complex.
Discussion?
We
Does
all know-
everybody
we all
remember
know-
where
we
that
all know how
was?
overrun that place is on any given
That was the
Saturday,
land
Sunday,
between
or-
the bike trail and the existing parking lot that is directly east of the exit and slightly north, like straight towards Quick Start.
Agreed. Should be priority.
I don't think it needs to be paved. I don't think it needs to be anything fancier than what we've got there currently. It just needs to be there.
Agreed.
I don't see any disagreements. I'm gonna add it.
A question on the trails. Last time we kind of said, like, a lot of this is already a work in progress for the trails. So we don't necessarily need that on the list, or you say
I would prioritize that. If it's already stuff that we've got an outline plan for, whether in the current capital plan or.
I would say the only one there is the High Trestle Trail that has traction, that has phasing, a plan.
That's
The others,
county is driving that.
well, that's very much a partnership with us and them. You know, once we hit city limits, you know, they have to take over to get it to the trail. But
And is the trestle connector, is that related to the regional park? Or could you go ahead and have the connector without the regional park work being done? 'Cause-
no. As it goes through the regional park, obviously that needs to be graded first before that trail goes through. So yeah, that is another catalyst that is kind of bumping this in the butt to get it going. You know, the water tower and the trail getting through there, both good things for moving this forward more quickly.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, but we've already budgeted for 2 of the phases,
Yes, yeah,
phase 2 and 3, I believe.
I think so. Yes.
That's, phase 1 is from the square out to Kiwanis Park, I believe.
Mhm.
And then 2 is from Kiwanis Park to the roundabout
Yes, yep,
corner, and then,
The roundabout where they're connecting
where it would,
to go back behind the school.
yeah, where it would cut on the south side.
and then there to the school. Because priority of the council was to give, when that school went in, was so kids had a way to walk without walking on the road. That was a big priority. So that will accomplish that, we hope.
The other items on the trails, to keep going on that, the Deer Haven to Bridge, that's that big stretch. That's the linear park where the pipeline goes through.
No, sorry, that's Parker to Woodhaven.
Sorry, Parker to Woodhaven. Okay, yep, I'm looking at the wrong one. My apologies.
Oh, no
Parker
worries.
to Woodhaven one. Across that pipeline. We've already got budgeted for the connector to the Neil Smith, and that's supposed to happen this year or next year, one of the two.
Should happen this year. We've done the boring and, you know, we're
we
looking
can
good.
cross that one off the
I
list.
personally would not put the rest of that, which is a much longer section, as a priority. You've got access down those winding side streets. Mostly the residents in those neighborhoods just want the actual connect to the Neil Smith.
Great.
So I would definitely deprioritize that.
I'd like to bring up the idea of the shelter house improvements.
Mm.
The lipstick on the shelter house, if you will. That makes money for us. It's a positive way to invest. It was a gift to the city that I don't know has been as cared for as it needs to be. And if we're gonna be resurfacing those tennis courts and making that a feature location,
It's currently our only rentable city
Correct.
space right now as well. Firehouse taking over, so yeah, I would agree with that.
All right, anything else that's really coming to the forefront for anyone? Just as a quick recap, I have pond health with natural planning, bandstand improvements, burying power / landscaping on the square, resurfacing the tennis courts, 4 functional scoreboards at the sports complex, additional sports complex parking, and the shelter house renovations. That is currently our list of 7.
Like frisbee golf at Doc Simmer would be good to get something there. I can't remember what the intern had quoted for prices on there, but that may be something that Friends of the Park could help with. What's it under? Yeah.
That's gonna cost it.
Yeah, I believe that,
$3,500.
yeah, that cost estimate was
Yeah,
below 10
okay.
grand.
Yeah.
For what was that?
Disc golf baskets.
Oh, yeah,
For Simmer.
there's to the falls part.
I do think that we need to select one of these backstops or both of these backstops being added to these smaller parks that do have existing parking as a mechanism for expanding and holding us over until that regional park is rolling. We currently have suggestions to add backstops to Kiwanis Park and potentially Leonard Park.
Most recent quote I got for a backstop was about $100 for just a T-ball sized backstop. So those can be hanging within current budget. Yeah.
But if we
We
had
wouldn't need to
3
do
of them,
any other prep to the site to do that.
It's really just a super fence. So pour a couple holes 2 to 3 feet deep, pour some concrete, hole in and chain link it.
That sounds like something we could take care of in the afternoon.
Right. Not me. I'll pay somebody to do it. If it's
Says the
if
farm
T-ball
kid.
is the intended use, if we were looking to do something more and talking kids older than 10 years old, then yeah, probably a little bit different.
Yeah, you'd want a skinned infield on that and everything.
For
we're talking about maybe using it for practice so
Right.
T-ball doesn't take up field space.
Yep. Calling it a sand lot, a grass lot, for all intents and purposes, I think a backstop, something to stop balls.
I know something some of our anglers on the board mentioned really being interested is the idea of some sort of fishing dock, fishing pier at 12 Oaks. Is that something that we're still interested in potentially looking at?
So that one came up as part of what do we do to fix the health pond and the runoff, and a lot of that ended up being, the answer to that being natural plantings. What do natural plantings do? They push the ability of people to fish back away. So whether it's putting in a temporary dock out there or a non-permanent dock, or having a fishing pier out there so that it continues to be
So that would
a
have to,
fishable,
that would have to go hand in hand with
it would
the
come
project probably.
at least below making sure the pond is healthy.
Is that something we want to add, or is there other projects that we feel are more urgent?
I think that makes sense if we're already wanting to make sure that those ponds are healthy and usable for recreation. Making sure that they're usable.
How, I guess I just don't know the answer. How much use do they get fishing during the
A
year?
lot.
Do they?
I live on one of those ponds.
Okay, yeah.
There is kids there. I would say in the summer especially, there is at least 10 kids every day that visit those ponds and fish.
And there'd be no safety concerns about having a dock out there?
No more so than them jumping in the water now.
No, I understand, but
I think it provides an aspect of safety too, like if you're going with young kids and then you have this
Structure.
enclosed, yeah, that they're on.
Other than a slippery slope bank.
yeah.
I could certainly show you what some communities around the metro have done in terms of a fishing pier. I mean, it is 4-foot railing with little bump outs for ADA accessibility, so it's not just a floating dock. There are safety mechanisms to deter people from falling in.
Like, there's usually a bench if you weren't fishing, but wanted to just sit there and look at the water or read or, yeah, right.
Anything else?
You mean kids don't fish off railroad trestles like I did?
They do, we just don't talk about them at commission meetings. What about this town square master plan? I think that, there was a conversation earlier about adding the playground improvements and some other pieces there. One thing that we did talk about last time was resurfacing that playground and how necessary that is at this point. That's expensive, resurfacing a playground is.
Mhm.
I would like to propose adding that onto the list to resurface
Yeah, so when
square
you
playground.
spoke to us last time, you also talked about replacing some equipment up here in the square. Is that outside of this, or?
So that is something I hope to accomplish before this CIP takes effect. I know that the Friends of the Parks is willing to jump in on that fundraising. I do have several private individuals and groups that are very interested in it. But right now I'm getting cost estimates to see what that would cost for some equipment, surfacing. But yeah, for all intents and purposes, I would like that to be a completed project before this happens.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's kind of why I omitted that.
That's for the equipment, but not necessarily the resurfacing.
Oh, those will kind of go hand in
Oh,
hand.
they will, okay.
Yep.
And I think it's okay if we don't put everything on here.
I like, personally, I think the 8 that you chose are,
Good ones.
I think
Me
that's
too.
quite full. And, that does also give us the option of, those additional parks that are coming online in the next 5 years, having master plans for those specific, that could give you number 9 and number 10 right there. No, I think you've done a good job in this exercise.
The only question I'd have, the second sand volleyball court, would we get a big bang for our buck out of that one in terms of, would that increase then the usage because of their leagues or more people?
It would give us the opportunity of offering more leagues and bigger leagues. Last year was the first year we did offer a co-ed league, so it is in its infancy, it is building. So I don't know that the need is there right now, but if you ask me that question again in 5 years, I'm sure I would kick myself for saying we don't want it right now. But yeah, I think that might be one of those things that would probably fall to the bottom a little bit, in just my personal opinion. But no, it would certainly be great to be able to offer 2 games at once and, not stretch it out over a whole evening kind of thing. But
That park has some unpredictability with water as well,
Yeah.
making it
It's the floodplain, so,
a challenge.
um,
Any last minute conversation for the good of the cause? We have.
I do have one thing, if I may, and maybe
Yeah.
Ron can help answer this for me. Who's, from a accountability perspective, like the plannings up around the town square here, like the planter box sort of we have on the northeast corner of the square up here. I noticed that was,
Call it the cannon.
I noticed it was falling apart and stuff like that. Who takes care of that and is responsible?
Originally, it was done with all volunteers, Legion members, other people like that.
Okay.
You're talking about the one over here across from the dance studio?
Yep.
Yeah. Legion Hall, local Legion Hall did that several years ago. And like all organizations like that, members move on or
Yep.
pass on and go around and interest has been lost. I've seen Jason work in it. I've seen our maintenance crew work in it. And it's just one of those things that you run out of volunteers, and that's something I wrote down. I wanted to talk about the sports complex. Almost everything out there at the sports complex was originally done with volunteers. I became involved in Little League in 1968 when I first moved out here. It was played on private ground. We had one field on private ground. Fortunately, we only had 2 teams in it. We got way more teams on it now. We've added 2 fields. 55 years.
So Ron, when you're talking about like volunteers doing stuff out there for the plannings, I would understand that, but actually like the structures and stuff like that, is that something that the city would take care of? or,
That would
The
probably be a
parks.
joint between my department and Public Works.
okay, I would like to put something, because we've been talking, and we did have something on here about just the plantings and maybe more of the structures, right? Just, because like I said, I noticed when I was over there this weekend that it was really falling apart, and
I'm talking about the actual cannon, the
No,
piece
like
or the
The landscape.
The
the
landscape break.
landscaping, yeah.
Well,
Because I could probably round up some volunteers to do some plantings if we need some plantings. I was worried about just the way the structure was.
and don't quote me on this, because I'm not sure, but I know there's probably some of our own ordinances about putting up obstructions near a sidewalk. You know, if you want to raise the curb to keep that stuff from, probably some ordinances against that.
We only knew some people that could help change those ordinances.
It would be a pre-existing structure, all right?
Pardon?
It'd be a pre-existing structure.
Yeah,
We got a big grandfather close.
yeah, Jason and I had, when Jason first came on, first of all, I want to compliment him on wanting to expand the tennis, or the volleyball courts to increase the leagues, because that was a big thought in my mind when we first put Jason on, was to increase recreational opportunities in Polk City, because, you know, before we've had softball leagues for adults, we've had different things that was always volunteer. Again, it's hard to get volunteers to do it anymore. So we hired somebody to get those things going, but now we have to provide the facilities. And something I was saving for number 8 on my liaison report, the mayor told me the other day that we have approved the site plan for the retirement village up on Leonard's ground, and they have volunteered to put in a pickleball court in Leonard Park. Have you even heard that? Am I letting the cat out of the bag? Okay, well,
Way to
good.
go.
I like to trump the mayor.
I haven't heard that.
Volunteering to put it in Leonard Park.
Yeah,
In the space that
and
was
use their parking.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I know there's some neighbors up there that aren't crazy about that, but that's gonna be a beautiful complex. It'll be a real plus. Cause I know a guy that's only about 2 years from moving in.
All right, just for confirmation before we move on. In non-ranked order, because you said we could submit 10 in non-ranked order, right? Okay, pond health with natural plantings, bandstand improvements on the square, burying the power and renewing the landscaping on the square, resurfacing on the tennis courts to add pickleball, 4 functional scoreboards at the sports complex, additional parking at the sports complex, shelter house renovation at Miller Park, a fishing pier at 12 Oaks or Marina Cove, whichever one is more suitable. And then for 9 and 10, we have investing in new parks and additional neighborhoods.
Good to me.
Reasonable.
Very good.
And that's just a recommendation, so we don't have to vote on it.
No, actually, that
We
would.
do have to vote on it.
Recommendation to council.
Yep, if you.
Okay,
wanna
can
recommend.
I get a motion and a second to make our 10 item recommendations for the 2630 CIP priorities?
All motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, same side? All right, motion passes. On to number 7, Jason, an update on RegBri.
Yeah, so I think it was the day that y'all met last was the official announcement that RagBri 50 is coming through here on day 4. That's Wednesday, July 26th. The route that day, they leave Ames, they go through Slater, Madrid, Polk City, Ankeny, before they get to Des Moines. They will be coming into town down Broadway, and then they will turn north on 3rd to get to 118th. They will go east. I'm not quite sure how they're going to get into Ankeny. Quite frankly, that's not my problem. I just want to, see how they do here. So, yeah, we've been meeting with, so far, department heads have been meeting kind of like a steering committee. Obviously there are things that public safety, Chief Hogriff and Chief Sipker are going to handle, things that are in my wheelhouse. So that's all coming together. And at a certain point, once we know what volunteers will do that day, we'll start to solicit volunteers to help out that day. We anticipate riders showing up here in town. Probably the real eager beavers might get here between 7 and 8, but a majority of the traffic we should see here from like 10 to and then the state patrol will be starting to usher people out around 1 o'clock, and they'd like to see all bikes out of town by 2 p.m. that day.
Do we know if Ragbri is doing anything to keep people off of the trail?
To a certain extent, yes, they have their route that they, suggest. Obviously, from a safety perspective, that's the one that's going to have state troopers at intersections. I can't say definitively how they could keep people off the Neil Smith in high numbers, but
We're concerned with bypassing us on the high trestle from Madrid to Ankeny.
I suppose that is possible, but I don't know how you police that or negate it.
Well, I can tell you right now, Ragbri is going to take precedent.
I'm not
They
quite sure
always
what
do.
that means in this
They
scenario.
always do.
I mean, I've rode Ragbri for years, and people don't typically bypass the route. I mean,
The opposite of my experience.
well,
People go off route to go to the parties all the time, and that high trestle trail is a huge attraction for people who don't live in Central Iowa. So for everybody who doesn't live here, that's going to be the draw rather than ride through Northwest Polk City Drive, whatever it is out there to Madrid. They're going to take the trail versus the county.
We did have our first pass-through town meeting downtown this past Saturday. Myself, city manager, fire chief, and mayor went to it, and we kind of got the lay of the land. What we can do to best promote Polk City on that day. So we will certainly have signage out, probably between Slater and Madrid, just saying, hey, in X amount of miles, Polk City, here's what we've got. So we'll certainly do our best to bring in those people, but it's going to be a big day, and truthfully, if some people do bypass us,
Yeah, it'd be nice.
When they're trying, the numbers they're trying to generate, it might be better to have some of them on the trail.
I think it would be worthwhile to also have at that 90-degree, the oasis there on the trail, and the 90-degree county roads, Sheldon Road.
the Sheldon.
Have some signage there as well. Might be a good idea. Hey, take a right here, get to Polk City, and back on route.
Yeah.
I'm sure Ragbri will have signage.
Who's handling the organizations that want to sell things in town? Will that come through you or through the
Yes.
city or?
Yep. So right now, city clerk and city manager are preparing, a special Ragbri ordinance, which is something that Ragbri promotes to, handle that influx of vendors that day. That has not went to council yet, but I know that's in the works. So more than likely, probably our city clerk will be that committee chair in terms of vendors and making sure that they're approved to be here and give them a spot.
And they will have to buy permits.
Correct.
Huge moneymaker. Polk City is very popular. It's the fourth time Ragbri has been through Polk City. First two, we weren't very successful. Then we learned to send people to meetings. We learned what you could do. Last time they came down, they'd come across the Mile Long Bridge and down 3rd Street. They suggested at the meeting, we block the street off. Block the street off right here on Van Dorn, sent them around a square, hired a band in a square. They stayed forever and spent a lot of money.
Would it be,
They're predicting, just think about it, there's 100,000 people supposed to be riding that day. That's what they're shooting for when they go into Des Moines. They each just spend $2. It's a lot of money.
could we make a recommendation to the city that maybe Kiwanis Park be reserved as like a vendor area or a fundraising area for local
Good idea on
nonprofits?
both sides of the road.
Just have that Kiwanis Park, it's got heavy shade,
Yeah.
it's got a water fountain there, thinking Boy Scouts, soccer, Little League, if they wanna sell lemonade, do what they can as a fundraiser, that area might be reserved for a local nonprofit.
No, I like
Type.
both sides of the road, because that's city utility land right across the roads.
It might be a tough sell to get the city to dedicate all of that area to non-paid.
So typically you'll see like a for-profit and a non-profit vendor fee. So there probably will be some sort of skin in the game for even the nonprofit at a
Absolutely.
drastically reduced price. And truthfully, as we look at the vendors that we want on the square, we will give priority to local. That's something also that Ragbri said is, this is when you want to showcase what Polk City's about. So you want your little leaguers, your soccer players, doing the Rice Krispies and the lemonade. So, yep.
Anything with kids is big.
Yeah, and obviously our Ragbri party will be centered on the square. We are working on, how many streets out we'll be closing on each side, to really accommodate bike parking, activities, port potties. It'll be quite the big deal. And eventually, all I wanted to say here is that once volunteer positions are identified, anybody that's not riding that day, we would have the need and the desire if y'all would help. But, I know there's soccer representation up here, there's Little League, so, I would totally anticipate you, working with your clubs, and that's great. That'll still add to the event as a whole by you guys doing that. So, no, it'll just be a very busy day. If you live anywhere close to where the bikes are coming in, I would suggest you park your car somewhere else so you can get to it and get out of your driveway
or
possibly.
Just leave it in your garage.
Yeah, or just don't even think about four wheels that day. But anyway.
Last time they were here, I was still working at the school and came down the hill. It looked like the state fair down there, wall to wall people.
No, it's exciting for our groups and our local businesses. Hopefully, if it's a good day, they'll.
Is Madrid or Ankeny the lunch spot?
Ankeny is the meeting town. Yeah.
Any questions about
And
Ragbri?
it's a short ride that day. It's a 50-mile ride. It was a short one for Ragbri, and
Yep.
I anticipate people staying.
Absolutely.
Did they talk about it at your meeting about hiring a band?
I've already got a band booked, so we're good. We're
If
good.
you ain't, there's a local one that's real good.
You in a band?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah. Dave Merrill, he lives up in TCI Townhomes. Remember the Iowa Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice?
Oh.
2 different groups. He's also books bands. I've told Monica's predecessor he's a guy you should contact when you need music.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah, I can introduce you to him.
I know there are some communities that are also choosing to have 2 hubs, knowing that there's just going to be so many people.
Yeah,
They're having one hub that's more like entertainment, rest, relaxation, listen to music, and one hub be food, vendors, but they're also having a band in that area so that there's still entertainment happening because there will be that many people.
what
I-
the,
Possibility to use the Third and Davis property or something like that.
That won't be closed, correct?
Yeah,
Is that
I
pushed
think
out
if
too
we were
far?
going to have satellites, I would recommend
The square and then Kiwanis
the
is what I
square,
was thinking.
Kiwanis, maybe West Elementary's parking lot. No, I think just getting them to the Third and Davis would be. Well, we might need to close more roads than.
Yeah.
We're already going to be closing a lot probably. So.
I did have a suggestion from someone. I have no idea if this is a possibility. I don't even know who farms the land, but the land that is owned by the Army Corps, that is across the street from the current maintenance facility,
Okay.
is divided into 2 plats. One's a large 40-acre plat that butts up against the cemetery. One is a smaller 7 to 10-acre plat that backs up against the wildlife preserve. Someone made the suggestion, and I think this is really smart, to put in some sort of like sunflowers or something in that area and pay for that area to be like a photo op, pretty place of Polk City.
that's one of the things they mentioned at the meetings. Photo ops are big.
Yeah, and
Well, Open that with mural then. Additional mural then.
Yeah.
in The Pocket Parkway then.
so that was a suggestion to see if we can rent that land and put wildflowers or sunflowers or something that would encourage people to stop and tag Polk City and be in that area.
We shouldn't let Ken get away. I wonder if you can get him growing by then. I have no idea about sunflower. All I know is 2 years ago when my granddaughter graduated, we drove all over central Iowa looking for sunflowers.
For
her
pictures.
graduation pictures.
All right, any other questions, comments, concerns, things for the good of the cause with Rec Bray? All right, council ladies then.
Well, I've said just about everything, told you about everything I know, what's going on for sure.
Do we know what that land that's been procured behind Polk City Pub is going to be used for?
Mm-hmm. No, Polk City Pub. Oh, yes, I do. Can I talk about it? Yeah. It's gonna be a parking lot.
Is it? Okay, I was wondering. In case people don't know, at the last council meeting, it was approved to purchase the land between the strip mall where Polk City Vet is and behind the creamery and Polk City Pub.
Where everybody parks in,
Yeah.
it's gonna get paved and lined off, and
Well, I think
because it's
I'll-
needed down here for the businesses.
Yeah.
And something we've talked about for a long time, and they wanted a deal, then they didn't want a deal, and now they wanted a deal again, so we think we got it at a pretty decent price.
And I think much needed.
Huh?
Much needed.
Yeah, very much.
And I
Yeah.
also think that it will alleviate some of the concerns about the bike traffic and the
Mhm.
movement in that area. I think it would be a big add.
And I just want to say I applaud the idea with the town square and working on the bandstand again, because the people of Polk City have made it clear that they want the square to remain the center of town. Both comprehensive plans we had do that, our land use plan, had big steering committees, and they all was overwhelming that they want to utilize, and we've done a good job with that, I think, especially since adding Jason, we've done a good job utilizing the town square. It's popular. Supposedly, we're the only town square in Polk County. I can neither deny or confirm that, so I don't know, but it's popular. People still come. And the bandstand in the past, since it is in Polk County, we're the only square, we've been done real good with Prairie Meadows grants.
Jason, anything from you?
No, I just want to mention, he's up there right now, but Polk City Parks and Rec and Polk City Little League partnered on a pretty big project out at the sports complex. We brought in new material for all 4 infields. It's what infields should look like, that nice red. They look really good out there. So, no, I just want to thank Polk City Little League for, making quite the financial investment into the sports complex, and I was happy that I could do what I could do to make that project happen. So, thank you, Polk City Little League, for helping out with that.
All right. Anything else from the commission for the good of the cause?
I do have one quick question, if I may. Ken mentioned, Jason, about suggesting I think he called it ambassadors for the parks. Have other towns did anything like that?
It's usually on a much larger scale where perhaps city staff cannot get to each park every day.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is not a novel idea. It is something that does take place. Yeah, absolutely. And, as we grow, and I'm a one-person department, it could fill quite the niche. So it could be good.
Anybody else? All right, my one thing is, my goal is to have these meetings be under an hour now that we're done with these big projects and talking about them. If nothing else, I would need a motion and a second to adjourn and close the meeting.
Same.
All those in favor of adjourning until May 1st?
Actually,
Those opposed, same sign.